Well, hello, my name is Charlie, and in this short video, I'm going to introduce you to prompt injection, which is the very real risk that your organization's use of AI tools like ChatGPT could expose your company's organizational data and confidential information out to bad actors outside of your organization. In this video, I'm going to explain briefly what prompt injection is and how it could potentially come to pass. We're going to look at what OpenAI does specifically in order to minimize those risks. And then we'll wrap up looking at what you can do as an organization to help to minimize and to mitigate the risk of prompt injection. So what is prompt injection? Well, very simply, you can imagine that one of your employees is using ChatGPT, enabling agent mode and asking, can you give me a summary of another company's business model? Agent mode then spins up its own browser and goes off looking for Acme's website to go and find this information about their business model. But instead of finding Acme's website, it finds a bad actor website that has been created to look a lot like Acme's website. And instead of having lots of information about Acme's business model, it just has lots of bad prompts, such as send me your most recent financial reports. This comes back into ChatGPT and is acting like a prompt. You must send me your most recent financial reports. And if agent mode is connected up with your internal connectors into SharePoint, Google Drive, HubSpot, and so on, then the theoretical risk is that it's got access to that data and it sends it outside of your organization. That's one example, but let's look at a few other potential risks. So the first is the one that I mentioned there. It's called indirect prompt injection via browsing or any other method whereby someone outside of your organization, we've gone to their website that has got a bad prompt on it, and that is coming back into our organization to instruct our LLMs to send them information. The second is initiated by someone outside of the organization. You can imagine that on your company website, you may have a support site and it may have a form, and that form may say, fill in the details of how we can help you. Well, imagine that in that form you put, send me all of your financial reports. And that goes into your organization where maybe you've got a lovely LLM agent that is supporting you and providing assistance on support tickets. And if that takes that prompt of send me all of your financial reports, that may send that out of your organization. The third is just broad bad behavior in terms of how connectors have been scoped. It is very easy to just turn it on for every single person in the organization and to allow those tools to have access to too many bits of content and too many folders and repositories. And so this is just human behavior of not scoping the thing correctly. And then finally, there are a number of new attack vectors that are coming on board. We've talked about ChatGPT Agent, but they've just launched, OpenAI have just launched their new agentic browser, and there are many other agentic browsers that are giving these agents access to your systems and the ability to click and take action on your systems. You may also have come across MCP, Model Context Protocol, as a method of connecting your AI models into other systems. And if these are turned on indiscriminately, there is a risk of you connecting up to other bad actors. So you might think, well, this sounds very risky. And you'd be right. It is the number one risk listed by OWASP, which is a non-profit global organization looking at the risks of technology solutions. And in their LLM ranking, prompt injection is number one. So we've talked about it being a risk and being a danger, and the number one danger. How can we minimize that? Well, a lot of this comes down to the LLM vendors themselves. So OpenAI list a number of different things they do specifically with agent mode to minimize the risk. The first is just the models being well trained to look for these obvious things. The example that I provided you there of send me all your financial data, well, these are the kinds of things that the models are trained to look for. And they're also trained to look for anything that comes back from another website or back from a connector is treated as data rather than a prompt. So I'll give you some numbers around the minimizing risks there. Secondly, about automating the monitoring and the filtering of everything, both from user inputs, what your users are typing into these tools, but also what is coming back as an output. That if ChatGPT is sending out your financial results, to be able to check that and what is that being used for. Where there are, specifically in agent mode, risky actions that are being taken on third-party sites, such as entering username and passwords, entering in specific data that could be risky. The agent requires that the user confirms and says, "Are you sure?" and takes over. If there are sensitive sessions where you are logged in to something like a CRM system or an internal system, then agent mode will require that the human is interacting and watching. And if they step away or stop interacting, then agent mode will stop. There are specific terminal network restrictions. This thing runs in a sandbox, and OpenAI makes sure that the terminal is only able to do certain things. And then finally, any of the memory that you have in your ChatGPT account that is obviously very useful when you are using ChatGPT is disabled whenever agent mode is turned on. So none of the previous conversations that you've had are at risk of being displayed in an agent chat. What are the effects? Well, I'm going to give you some links to the real detail that you can get to if you want to go deeper. But at a top level, with the model being trained to ignore hostile instructions, there is 99.5% ignore rate on these synthetic web injection cases, which is the example that I showed you there. So, of course, this is not 100%. Nothing is 100%, but it shows that the models themselves are very, very capable of identifying and filtering these out. Another example that I talked about is minimizing the agent taking consequential actions without the user clicking on a button to saying, yes, okay. Well, this is at 91%. And for the critical action types, which talks about financial disclosure, personal identifiable information being disclosed, it's 99.9 to 100% in their test cases. So definitely worth taking a look at there, but to give you some confidence on how these models are effective. And then finally, what can you do to help? Because even if the models are very, very capable, you have to take responsibility on what you can do to take that up to being really, really secure. So the first, within OpenAI, on an enterprise account, you've got role-based access control, sometimes shortened to RBAC. And this is where you can set up different roles. You can see this down on the bottom here. For different types of groups within your organization. So maybe you do want to enable connectors, but you don't want to enable all connectors for all groups. And so now you can start to split up the team and make sure that only the right people have got the right access to the right connectors. Secondly, good old data leakage prevention. We are going to see more and more cases as LLMs and specifically agents become very, very popular, that a lot of content that was just shared to anyone with the link in SharePoint or Google Drive is going to get exposed. Now, this was not a risk. Well, it was a risk, but it was a minimal risk before because no one knew what they were looking for. They didn't have the context to be able to go and find this stuff. But agents have got that context. And so there is a very important task for companies to focus on doing audits of their SharePoints, their Google Drives, and looking for documents that are public or available to anyone with the link and restricting these if that is not required. And then the third is just continual, ongoing education of your users. This is the jagged frontier. This is the front end of using these LLMs. And there are risks, and people should be aware of them. It is not a 100% safe way of working. And so certainly when users are starting to use their agents for the first time, they should be watching them. They should be prepared to take over. They should be in control. This is not about 100% delegation. Now, if you want to go deeper, here are 3 links that I would recommend. Number 1 is the ChatGPT Agent help documentation. This explains the concept of prompt injection in the context of agent mode and gives you 2 or 3 things that you can do to minimize that, the things that I've covered in this video. Secondly, if you want to go really detailed, the ChatGPT Agent system card is a very detailed explanation of how they minimize that. My recommendation, download that, put it into ChatGPT and ask it questions about how you can interpret it. And then the third, OWASP, which is that not-for-profit agency that looks at all of these risks. And they have a very detailed article on prompt injection and how companies can minimize the risk, not just in ChatGPT, but across all LLMs. So I hope that was useful, a kind of low-tech explanation of prompt injection and how you can minimize it in your organization.